So I wanted to continue with my 2020 hindsight sharing that I did a few weeks ago, and I've got another one that's been brewing. And these 2020 hindsight thoughts come up particularly during exploring monastic life. It gives me an opportunity to do sort of this pre and post Dharma life review. It happens also during winter retreat. And so what has come up this year and has come up, it's more clear this year, is that I've become very keenly aware of the number of wrong conceptions that I've had over my life and how that these particular ways of thinking have impacted my life. I've acted out in response to them. And that I think about these. I have two of them I want to share today, which I've shared before, but now more deeply this year. Is that, when I think about all the karmic dispositions that we come into this life with, and all the conditioning factors that we're raised with, the gender, the religion, the education, the family, the culture, it's not surprising that we put these things together in somewhat of a distorted way, and then we live by these wrong beliefs. And how I've had these distorted conceptions, not just about myself, but I've had them about other people, and I've had them about the world. And that with the Dharma, I've begun to, and I continue to examine these wrong views, challenge them, slowly dismantle them. And over the years, the longer I'm in this stream of ordained life here at the Abbey, the more I see what a game changer being in this community, living in community, including with my teacher, has really made a huge difference. The training, living in precepts it's been a real game changer for these very gnarly, snarky kind of wrong conceptions. There are many of them that I have. I don't know about you, but I've got about 3 to 5 of them that are kind of major ones that have brought on all kinds of happiness in my mind and have made me act out with particular kinds of behavior. So the Dharma has really helped me to clarify on how far off I have been on these misconceptions. And generally speaking, just off the top of my head, when I think about some general misconceptions, things about being a people pleaser, I've got some real thorny authority issues, relationship issues, distorted ideas we might have about money and sex and fame and loyalty, all the things that the group discussions are stirring up. That's part of where I get a lot of my information from, is what's happened during those courses over the years. Self-hatred, self-doubt, that are major impediments, not just to my own practice, not just to my ordained life, but just being a balanced, normal, kind human being, how much they've gotten in the way of my just engaging the world with a kind heart. So still examining after 20 years, I have 2 wrong conceptions. I've shared these before, but now I'm going a little bit deeper. So the first one is this very wrong conception about what I think freedom actually is. I have believed that freedom was the ability to, and we hear this a lot here at the Abbey, is to do what we want, when we want, to choose where I lived, who I was in relationship to, what I did for a living, what I was responsible for, and where I could go without having to answer to anybody but myself. In fact, one of the definitions in the dictionary of freedom is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. That was me. I was so hooked into sense pleasure. I was so hooked into adventure, usually with a certain level of risk to it. I would walk along the edge of my life a lot. And that was what really fueled me, because that showed me that I was free, that nobody could stop me from doing what I wanted. Looking back on this over time, looking at this freedom, I was perpetually swimming in dissatisfaction. I was perpetually swimming in restlessness. I was perpetually swimming in a lack of direction. When things got hard or tough, I bailed. Whether it was around relationship, job, living situation, I thought I was being free and independent, but really I was under the control of my afflictions, my self-centered thought. There was a lack of integrity. There was a lack of consideration for others. And I thought this was the meaning of freedom. It was like the analogy that came up yesterday was I was like a small boat without a rudder on a really big ocean. And the waves of karma and the winds of afflictions and the distorted conceptions just putting me here and driving me there and sending me here and sending me there, thinking that I was totally under the control of these movements when in fact I wasn't. There was no purpose, there was no direction in my life. But I thought because I had this misconception that I was free. 20 years living in the world specifically under this misconception. The second wrong conception that I have carried most of my life is that I had this incredible fear around commitment. Now, you would think that this would be bizarre because the definition of commitment is a willingness to give your time and energy to something you believe in. Sounds fairly benign, sounds very lovely. My confused mind thought commitment was about being backed into a corner, confined, obligated, bound up in somebody else's knees like I had a gun at my head. This drove so much of my life decisions, I can't even begin to tell you. I would move towards something that really called in my heart, but as soon after getting engaged, I'd run away. It was like too close. There was something fearful about it, creating negative karma, breaking trust, hurting people's feelings. And it only took probably about a good 15 years where it became clear to me that underneath this fear of commitment was this fear of failure, this fear of making a mistake, of doing something wrong. And that it made this inability to commit to things that during the course of my life really mattered to me. They were really precious. They really stirred some deep yearning in my heart. Luckily, when I met the Dharma, I didn't run away. That would have been one of the moments in my life where I would have run away. So then I brought these two distorted ways of thinking to the Abbey, and it did not go well. For a long time, this thought of feeling, this freedom feeling, is that I wanted things to go my way. I was good at powering over people, not listening to them, not empowering them. And freedom meant not only thinking that I controlled my own life, but I was also, freedom meant controlling others' lives as well. I was hard to live with, and I was told this very clearly by a friend many years later, that I was really an unbearable person to live with. On the other level, as far as commitment goes, I came here and I said I would come for 2 years to help Venerable settle in. I wasn't planning to stick around. I didn't want to get tied down. I mean, if you think there's a lot to do now, imagine 2 or 3 people living here trying to support this beautiful vision. It didn't look like the Abbey back then. There was a barn, there was a house, there was a garage, there was a lot of forest. I always had, for the first 5 to 7 years, I always had an exit plan. I always had an opt-out when things would get too tough and I'd get too scared. But then things started to happen. Because living within such a vast Dharma vision, living with someone who believes deeply in that vision and wanting very much to support her despite my fear of commitment and this bizarre idea of freedom, keeping precepts, thought training, following a schedule, training to challenge these distorted conceptions, receiving teachings, I began to feel less restless. I actually experienced some contentment. I felt less lonely. Contentment, Venerable, I didn't want it to get too loud that I was content after a few years here. I developed some integrity. I started thinking about others before I acted out. And I started spending more time working on my afflictions, looking at this self-centered thought that was driving things. And it's very interesting because one of the second definitions that I've read about what freedom is the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. And in the Dharma, that is where I began to see some sense of freedom from being totally imprisoned by my own afflictions, my self-centered thought, my self-grasping ignorance. That is slavery. To be able to start putting the pieces together, my pride, my arrogance, my self-hatred, that's not freedom. So things started to slowly shift. The freedom part of my mind got clear. I saw that, and it was a huge perspective. I mean, it's slow going. Living in this container, this Abbey, everything is training. Training in the Dharma, and it's a huge change of thinking, 180 degrees. You have to go through a huge perspective shift from what I thought was true, and then to look at the garbage in my mind, the lies and the stories that I believed about everything. There's a huge, slow process to change this perspective. But the Dharma is so darn strong, this container is so powerful, that it began to work on my mind, which is really stubborn, really obstinate, really full of itself. So I really started to see some changes. So the freedom got clear, what I was, enslaved by my afflictions, self-centered thoughts, self-grasping ignorance. That was my task at hand. The other one was to see that commitment required a willingness and determination to actually stay here, to actually not run away, and to begin to feel like that you belong here, and that you're part of something much bigger than yourself. And my self-centered thought, the fear of commitment would come up because my self-centered thought hates the idea of something bigger than itself. It really hates that, and it fought a lot as my mind started to change. Coming to terms with my own mind, my own confusion, my pride, the attachment to being right, being lazy. And what I came to the conclusion is I have to commit to this vision because sentient beings need us to commit to this vision, creating these incredible causes to be here. Whether you're ordained, whether you're a long-term guest, whether you're aspiring for ordination, being here, it's a very rare set of causes and conditions to make this happen. And that when you choose to think differently and things begin to change, they change at a much deeper level. But it's a lot of work. It's a slow process. There's highs and lows. It's like standing on the edge of a pool, and you put your toe in to check the temperature, and you look down, and you see that it's pretty deep. The Abbey's vision is pretty deep. And so I started at the shallow end, almost at the baby pool. And I worked my way through the misconceptions, started reframing my life with the lens of the Dharma. Joy started to arise. Purpose started to arise. I started leaning into this amazing thought of bodhicitta, that maybe I'm here to benefit others. It wasn't so scary. So I think that, I don't know about you, but I have some wrong conceptions that drive my behavior. But living here, precepts and training all the time with all of you and our teacher, it drives them to the surface to really look at. It's like living in this vast room. You live at the Abbey. All the windows are open. The door is open. There's a high ceiling, lots of light, just like the Buddha Hall. When you come and live here, you are choosing to live in a room that's got everything there to show you what you got, what you need. You see the filth, you see the darkness, you see the stench. It can be transformative. The choice is always there. And it's not easy because we have bought into these misconceptions. I bought into them hook, line, and sinker for maybe not even this life, but many, many lives. And that the self-centered thought can put up a huge fight. But it's all worth it. I mean, I see that more and more clearly every year I'm here. That it's a life practice dealing with these distorted conceptions because other issues emerge. There's a lot of levels here. But there is a sense of some real freedom as the years have gone by. And I'm slowly starting to work my way a little bit more into the deep end of the vision, believing that the Abbey is directly connected to sentient beings, that its place in the world is crucial and necessary for the well-being of sentient beings, that it is indeed, literally and figuratively, a beacon of light in this darkness. And what else is there to do? I mean, Venerable says that. That's a $6 million question. What else would you want to do? Reclaiming ourselves is really what this ordained life is about. Reclaiming our lives with the Dharma, with bodhicitta, with wisdom, for the benefit of all sentient beings. And because I do these pre and post Dharma reviews every life, I can see, as His Holiness says, when you look over the years, you can see the changes, you can see the growth. You can see the understanding deepen. And for me personally, there just hasn't been any other place. And this program in particular gave me opportunity to clarify some of these misconceptions and to know what I was dealing with. And it's been a really great sense of bearing fruit. You know, really, the hard work is really beginning to bear fruit. And, you know, I hope to continue to have it bear fruit and continue to work on these misconceptions. They're not going away, but I'm getting a handle on them at least. So I really want to encourage folks that this place, my life in particular, what I'm sharing with you, this story, has made a transformative change. It's been a game changer beyond anything that I would ever experience. I have no idea what I would be doing instead, but I would not be well. I'm almost sure of that.